Thank you very much. And I'd like to introduce our third panelist, Sophie Luo Shengchun, Chinese activist, human rights defender. She's also an engineer and a mother of two daughters. She's been involved in human rights work since April 2013, when her husband, human rights lawyer and activist Ding Jiaji, was arrested and then imprisoned for 3.5 years. He was forcibly disappeared on December 26, 2019 for attending a gathering in Xiamen with like-minded lawyers and friends, was cruelly tortured for 6 months, is still being kept in a detention center in deplorable living conditions as of today. And on June 24th, 2022, Ding Jiaji was secretly tried and convicted to 12 years in prison plus 3 years deprivation of political rights on April 10th, 2023. But no sentencing documents were provided to the family. Please, thank you.
Okay, thanks. The victim of Communist Memorial Foundation to have this panel, and thanks everyone for coming. Thanks VOC to inviting me to speak. Should I? Is this clear enough? Yes. Okay. Yes. I appreciate I don't waver speech. It's talking about keep fighting and build a vision. Today I'm here. I want my presentation, my topic. I want the core point is end CCP, the mission of this generation. I want to build a vision for this generation. We have to end CCP, Chinese Communist Party. My husband, Ding Jiaxi, started his research on the Chinese Communist regime when he was a college student. And after many years contemplation and investigation, he came up with the idea to bring change to Chinese communist regime through civil rights advocacy, civil society construction, and nonviolent protest. He jointly led the Chinese New Citizens Movement in 2012 with legal scholar Xu Ziyong. They encouraged the Chinese citizens to practice the rights written clearly in the Chinese Constitution, to network with other citizens and to confront social injustice and oppose human rights abuses in daily life in China. Their peaceful and lawful activities, however, resulted in Chinese authorities arresting and sentencing them in 2013 to 4 years and 3.5 years prison on the trumped up charge of gathering a crowd to disrupt public order. After serving their sentences, both men resumed their activities in promoting civil rights. They reached out to citizens throughout China who share the same aspiration in promoting the growth of civil society. But their gathering with citizens caught the attention of the authorities again. After a 2-day private gathering in Xiamen, Fujian province, with around 20 like-minded friends, the public security authority forcefully took away Ding Jiaxi, my husband, on December 26, 2019, and Xu Ziyong on February 15, 2020. Authorities placed them in communicado detention. They were subject to torture and ill treatment, such as prolonged sleep deprivation, loud noise harassment, interrogation for weeks while being bound tightly to an iron tiger chair, food and water restrictions, prolonged immobilization, no sunshine or daylight, no shower for 4 months. Security officials later arrested them and transferred them into a remote detention center where they continue to be subject to physical and mental abuse. They were prohibited to meet their lawyers for about 1 year. After the lawyer were permitted to see them, the lawyers were forced to sign confidentiality agreement, promising not to release any information for the 2 cases. So John just said then they were secretly tried last year and was secretly sentenced this year to 14 and 12 years, respectively. When I was born, the Chinese Communist Party badly persecuted my father during the Cultural Revolution. Because of that, like many Chinese of my generation, I choose not to study anything related with politics and to avoid anything related with politics until my husband was firstly taken away in April 2013. I love my husband very much, and I know he is a law-abiding person. So why would the Chinese authorities arrest him? I started to research his activities, and I was shocked to find so many human rights abuse ongoing and covered by the CCP's controlled news every day. I suddenly felt the grip of the Chinese CCP and realized that China is actually a big jail. I made the difficult decision to move to United States right away to protect our 2 daughters and avoid being held as hostage. So I arrived in United States on June 2013. But I was in regular communication with Jiaxi's friends in China. Mostly they are Chinese human rights lawyers. I also met many friends in the US and internationally who care about the fate of China and have been tirelessly supporting human rights and democracy, like all of you are here. They helped me deal with the pain of missing my husband, and I began to think about what I can do to promote human rights and democracy, not only as wife of my Jiaxi, but as a Chinese citizen. I began to pursue democracy and freedom as a way of life, as one of the things I must do every day, as my husband said. In 2017, after my husband was released from his first jail sentence, he came to visit my daughters and me in United States for 2 months. During that time, everyone tried to convince him to stay in the US. My colleagues even suggested me to hide his passport. I so desperately wanted him to stay, but he insisted to be back to China. And I understood his mission was in China. It's been 3.5 years since my husband's second detention. I have tried my best to speak up for him and done whatever I can to appeal for his case according to the Chinese criminal law. I have sent over 40 letters to Chinese authorities, but I didn't receive any feedback. Over the past 10 years of advocacy and observation, I clearly saw that with a one-party dictatorship, no freedom or rule of law or universal rights can exist at all. The CCP's one-party dictatorship is the source for my suffering, for my family's suffering, and the suffering of millions of Chinese families. The CCP sentenced my husband Xu Ziyong over 10 years. They believe that they can stop the growth of civil society and the aspiration for democracy and justice. But CCP, they are wrong. We are not powerless. I'm determined to continue the cause of my husband and Xu Ziyong. I'm determined to continue the cause, not only under the mission of calling for human rights and civil society, but directly under the mission of ending the CCP. I pray to God for granting me wisdom and strength to devote myself to the mission of this generation. And I call for solidarity of worldwide like-minded friends to action together with me. Let's end CCP in this generation altogether. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Grace, Valdes, and Sophie, for your powerful presentations. We're going to open now to questions and answers. I think I see, let me see if there's somebody with the microphone over there. So please raise your hand if you have any questions for the three panelists. If I don't see hands, oh, here we go.
While I was listening to Sophie, it's a parallel to the person who's going to receive the award today, Karamurza, because I think it's a very good parallel between your husband and him. He left his wife and went to Moscow despite everyone. So we have to end two, actually. We have to end Putin and CCP. So that's one thing. But the other thing, Sophie, I work with many Chinese people here. And some of them, don't like CCP. But I witnessed myself a Chinese person who, while watching the military parade in China, the real exercise of power, she cried being so proud of China. And she lives here. So how can you convince people like that, not to mention that America is China is such a big economical player? How you convince people like that in America? And the same thing is for many Russians who live here, and they like Putin, and they live in this world. So how can we convince people living in the Western world and still liking the things that you fight against?
Very good question. Shall I answer now? Thank you so much for your question. Yes, I totally agree. When I look at the parade of the army, I also feel so proud of my country. I share the same feeling, and I love my country. I can't say the government so much until I saw the shoes of my husband. So what I want to say is, yes, it's very difficult to educate the generation under the fake news, under the covered news by CCP. So my point is, the truth tells everything. When I touch the truth behind the everyday life, I right away know how to choose what I need to do. So I call for the truth to be brought to China, to everyone. Right now, we have a very difficult task is to overcome the internet censorship we call the firewall. This is one of my actions. I worked with a team of people to bring truth back to China. For example, the case of my husband and Xu Ziyong, they dare not let Chinese people even know their names. It's so few people know even their names, let alone what they did. So I would like to say, to bring the book, to bring the media, to bring all the facts back to Chinese, it's the very critical way for people to know how to choose, how to love their country, to fight for the real good things for their country. Thank you.
Okay, the young lady in the back first, then this gentleman, and then this other gentleman. And
Thank you. My name is Katerina Adarchenko, and I work as political management with elections. And, you know, I see in many countries which was under pressure, Soviet Union and in China, I think the same issue that it's very strong paternalism. So if we discuss like some change in China or even in Central Asia, which now on influence of Russia and China, we see that people and even people with low income, they usually trying to find that same dictator, so the same paternalist model of government. So what is of your point is the most useful tool of changing this social agreement and to change this, request of leadership in countries who was so long under communist pressure? Thank you.
Is there anyone particularly wanted to address that to?
I think.
Yes, I think that very important is to understand the roots of the communism and roots of local society, some understandings. Because without understanding, you will be not successful to change the situation. And if we talk about the regions you say about Central Asia, we have to understand, I call principal structures. Principal structures of society, on which background everything is built. For example, the territories of Central Asia is built on the Golden Orda system. Yes, Golden Orda system, which very, very deep roots somewhere before, because you know this Mongol empire for centuries, they destroyed local structures. And if you will do something, for example, in Uzbekistan, you have to go deep in the history to find structures Uzbekistan or Khwarezm this time exist. Yes, or sometimes very deep. The same like in Russia. What it means Russia? Russia is Rus, Kievskaya Rus, official name. Yes, some state built by Varyaks, by Normans, by Vikings, but really they have quite democratic structures inside. Like in Novgorod, for example, they have some local parliament and they have possibilities to do such things. But what is Moscow? Moscow is outpost of Golden Orda in Rus, is a commanding post, and they use this vertical system of society and destroy everything. And difference between Ukrainians and Russians sometimes exists in these very deep roots differences. Because Kievlians or Kiev people, so Litovskaya Rus, Lithuanian Rus part, they have the same structure still, and they have differences in behaviors. So sometimes historical research deeper shows ways what to do to re-establish original forms of even Asia democratic systems, consisting of some meeting like in Russia, Sobor, yes, some quite interesting structure, yes, which elected Tsar in case if not have. So we have to do a lot and to say true about a long history, because what do regimes? They change histories. They change history, say that they have only one way to do as Communist Party says. Yes, you have to deal with this and tell stories about democratical history of the nations. Every nation's inside is democratic because people will be free and successful. Sometimes they are different, but we have to concentrate on this.
If I add one thing, North Korea also has a similar like China. So we do have a military parade and we have a lot of pride on ourselves about our country. I think that core belief came from our brainwash system in our country. Since we are small and we are able to speak a word when we are toddler, we are taught that our country is the best, our dear leader is the God, and they fought from the Japan, and we earned our liberty in our country and all the good things about our country. And we were taught about our biggest enemies, Japan and America. And because of America, we are poor and we are hard, we are suffering and all that. So people were taught many years, and we believed that so long time. But after we came to America, we kind of learned about the true history, and then we opened our eyes and we realized, oh, that was not true, and this was true, and now we have to act. So all those changes took time. So my opinion is that we have to teach the right history to those people in the Western world, so then they can realize what they have been taught wrong information. And then we are responsible to teach them the right history, right information, and right reality, what's happening in those communist countries. Like North Korean people, Christians, they will go to the political prison camp for their lifetime. And all those people who tried to find freedom, they will go to prison camp for their lifetime. And they will not even live more than 5 years in the prison because the labor is too harsh and too difficult. And their malnutrition, food condition, health condition. Well, the communist country said all free education, free healthcare, everything is free, everything is provided by the country, but basically in reality it's not. The patients, they have to find their own medicine to go to hospital to get their treatments. And they have to bribe those doctors operate the surgeries for them. And students, they have to bribe their teachers and pay for their books, their uniforms, and their everything. The students are responsible for all the education process. So it's not actually free. It's way expensive than what we are having in American system. So please be aware about those. And then we have to come up with the strategy how we can convince those people with the right history. Thank you.
Okay, I want to add one point here. This is talking about the lying. You know, we just said Russia is lying, but Chinese government is lying also. You know, the thing, my husband and Xu Ziyong, they didn't create any new cause. They just ask people to follow the Chinese constitution, to follow the laws. They didn't create any new things. The thing is, CCP, they say something beautifully to attractive you, but they did is completely opposite. That's exactly the education of this VOC. Tell people what is the truth behind the CCP described. They described beautifully, you will have food, you will have everything you just said. But on the contrary, they don't. They take away everything from people. They take away what you did for them. They just twist the principle and make you to misunderstood. It's they give you everything. No, it's you earned everything, but they take away. So we just really need to resist this kind of brainwash and or say political lobbying things. Thank you.
Thank you. This gentleman here.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm Dolkun Isam Uyghurs. I'm from the World Uyghur Congress. Yes. So today we know the CCP how dangerous for the and the human rights, global democracy, international. Concentration camps still, and the Tibetan people is also subject for the cultural genocide. Hong Kong democracy destroyed. Yes, the Chinese human rights visitors in the suffering a lot. Yes, we have seen, but we haven't seen any support from the mainland China, from the people. Even, okay, is there a Chinese CCP is the master brainwashing. There is also internet censors, no space to the people speaking out. Even we haven't seen any support for the Hong Kong democracy movement. But this we can understand because China can control everything inside, but outside. And the Democrat, for example, last month, China's prime minister visiting Germany. I coming from Germany. We hold demonstration, Tibetan, Uyghurs, Hong Kongs. But other side, so many Chinese young generation students and the support Chinese prime ministers hang the Chinese flag support. And the same pictures we have seen different places around the world. So, and this young generation Chinese students, they are enjoying freedom of democracy, freedom of expression, the enjoying the Western value, but support the Xi Jinping. What is the reason?
China.
What is the reason why this Chinese citizen in the Chinese diaspora exile still with cooperate this dictator regime? Yeah.
Thank you.
That's a very good question too. Shall I answer?
Please.
Today I invited my friend from Yale University. I tell Milda, I said, this is the awakening generation. She belonged to one of the awakening of next generation. Because you know what? The kids right now in the university in different country are the same age as my daughter, as this friend. They are, in my generation, I was educated, do not touch politics. Politics will brought you suffer. So when I teach my kids, I did the same thing wrong. I do not tell them the truth. I believe many of my generation's parents did the same thing wrong. So that is why I said, right now, I have a lot of things to do outside China to educate those people, to awaken those still many of them not being waken up yet. I went to some university, the percentage which awakened is maybe 1%, but you know what, did you heard about the white paper movement? Once they know the truth, once they understand what the generation have been fighting for, what's the truth behind the CCP, some of them awaken very quickly. So I will say we keep educating, keep telling them the true story is the only way to make them to change their position, to support democracy instead of the dictatorship. Thank you.
Thank you. I think, yes, it was you next, then you, and then we have you there in the back. Go ahead, sir.
I'm Peter Murphy, an intelligence analyst and a former diplomat. I absolutely agree with you that our number one priority has to be to break the Great Firewall. And I'd like to see our intelligence agencies reorient to very specific examples of uncovering corruption within the Chinese government and then broadcasting that back in to China. In the event of an invasion of Taiwan, take about 400,000 soldiers and sailors to even attempt to win Taiwan. Every one of those will be a single child with no brothers and no sisters. Can you give me a feeling for how the Chinese will react when 400,000 families lose their progeny? And if I may, do you have other suggestions? Do we want to increase tourism of Chinese outside of China? Do we want to increase students going to university outside of China?
Sorry, I might not fully catch your point. You are saying single child policy. Yeah, single child policy.
All the current soldiers and sailors have no brothers and sisters.
Yes.
So if they sink the invasion fleet, there's 400,000 families that lose their progeny during the invasion. That's got to be very disturbing for 400,000 families in China. Is Taiwan really worth it?
Taiwan really worth it. Of course, we have to avoid this kind of war. I want to say we definitely don't want to see the war happen in Taiwan. And regarding the next generation, yes, they are one-child generation. or the family will suffer. Yeah, I think actually that's a good education point for my generation to teach the fact to their, if Chinese Communist Party keep wiggling a war with Taiwan, it will be your kids to fight. Then you will lose them. Yeah, that's a real good point. Thank you so much. I just got the logic. Very good. Really, that's a good point to educate my generation's people.
Madam?
Yes, my question is directed at Grace Joe. First of all, thank you very much for your excellent and very interesting remarks. You had mentioned that the young people in North Korea prefer an earlier time, even under Japanese control. I'm wondering more about their attitudes. Do they want to be united with South Korea? What do they think of South Korea? What do they think of the United States? I'm just wondering what the potential is for the younger generation.
Thank you. Thank you for that question. Well, since today's time limit, I couldn't explain details, but if I briefly explain, the current generation in North Korea, they are able to access information from outside of the world, which is the South Korean pop songs, movies, and TV series through the USB device and DVD copies and tablets and smart devices. And those young generation, whoever born after 1990s, at least in their lifetime, they watched one episode. So through those TV shows and movies, they already know that how wealthy the South Korean people are living in their country. But the government and the education system in North Korea, they are still teaching people that South Korea is poor and a lot of people dying on the street, and North Korea has to work hard to support that country because it's a brother country. But because of America's behind of South Korea, we are not able to reach out to them. So that's how they teaching those young generation. But they already realize that's a lie because through those social medias and information going in. So as a North Korean defectors who came out from North Korea, and a lot of leaders, they found a lot of different groups and projects. They're sending a lot of informations like this, pop song, dramas, and a lot of newspapers and a lot of information from the outside of the world that they're bringing into North Korea to awakening those people up. And because of those young people already awakening, we are seeing the hope that North Korea will change internally. However, like some people mentioned earlier, we still have our loyalty in our heart because we were brainwashed for so long time. So we know our country is lying to us. We know that our country cannot feed us and they're not doing a good job, but we also think that, maybe it's not the dear leader, maybe the people who are under him is not doing a good job, that's why we are suffering. So we are still need a time to awakening those people up with the true information, but slowly changing. So going back to answering you, young generation North Korea, they're changing perspectives toward to South Korea and America, but not fully change their loyalty. The point they want to go back to, like back in their ancestor time, is because right now the North Korean people, they are suffering too hard, and then they feel like, our grandparents' time wasn't that bad, even though Japan controlled our country. Why not some other forces coming into us and then just end this type of life? That's what they're saying. It's not just want to go back to that certain time, but they hoping that the Communist Party ends right now, no matter what kind of method it is. So that's what current generation hopes for.
Question back there, sir. We have time for one more.
Hi.
You'll be the last question. Go ahead, sir.
My question is for Professor Rakutis. Since in your lifetime, I mean, this all happened before I was born, but in your lifetime, the Soviet Union disintegrated and your country, Lithuania, achieved independence and freedom. So I was wondering if you could share what some of the central lessons of how that occurred for the people represented by your colleagues. Thank you.
No, Lithuania was country which has a state position from 13th century and was taken to Russia, Prussia, and Austria in the late 18th century. And from this time, we have some Russian occupation 123 years. And during First World War, Lithuania got independence back. And 20 years of independence really built back Lithuanian nation. Yes, we have feeling at our superiority, I will say, in Soviet Union, because we have this 20 years of freedom. And people ask us why we not are Russians and will not join Soviet Union, say we are not part of the system. We are people from the West, temporarily, and everything will be finished. Yes, we have the fighting against Soviet Union after Second World War, from 1944 till 1953. What it means? 7 years of fighting without any support from outside. People live in bunkers somewhere in the forest. And during this time, they write Vision of Lithuania, very famous Vision of Lithuania, and we fulfill such vision. It was written in the bunkers in somewhere, in the wilderness, and people have no support, live under the ground for full winter time. They write the visions, yes, and such visions were put into some places. And finally, when Soviet Union go to the crisis, yes, it was perestroika time. We use Soviet constitution to go out from Soviet Union, but of course we are not part of Soviet Union. We're based on our local customs and local history. And we were the first nations, we begin this fight in this Soviet area, not outside, but inside. And we're so successful in this big support of Russians, Ukrainians, and other countries, because people understand that such fight for freedom is general for all Soviet Union. It's so important. And the Russians, Ukrainians go, and 1990, we declare our independence 1990, and 1991, we are attacked by Soviet, this time, Soviet tanks, really. And our parliament building we are working now was our fortress, but not by machine guns was defended, but by people who stay around, yes. And such thing shows that civil society is a shield of our independence, was fight not by army, but by our people. And problem is that when you have structure of society, which not consists on citizens, but on all-time peasants, people who are on the supervision, they have not feeling, they are not free people, they're people of this man, yes, and when you have such structure, it's very hard to build something like West style, because you not have such systems. And what you have, first of all, to build society for free people, yes, for people who are not dependent on something, they are interested in politics, they are voters, yes, and you need time to develop such part of your society. It's very hard to do when we're small people, like in Soviet time. We're small people. No, we not participate. You have to be strong, and maybe somewhere in immigration, you have possibility to build, like our first newspapers were built in the United States. Yes, sometimes, yes. And Voice of America is still today is our flag. And we have to keep such initiatives for the future to develop new citizens. Because when you begin a fight, you need citizens, not peasants, not dependent people, not slaves. Yes, you have to have free people in society.
My apologies. I've been told that we've run out of time, so I'm terribly sorry. But I want to conclude. One of the themes running through has been that of the lie. And I think it serves to go back to Vladimir Lenin, who stated on October 2nd, 1920, in an address to Russian communist youth, quote, "The class struggle is continuing, and it is our task to subordinate all interest to that struggle. Our communist morality is also subordinated to that task. We say morality is what serves to destroy the old exploiting society and to unite all the working people around the proletariat. Fidel Castro on March 26, 1964 stated, quote, I conceive the truth in terms of a just and noble end. And that is when the truth is truly true. If it does not serve a just, noble, and positive end, truth as an abstract entity, philosophical category, in my opinion, does not exist, end quote. So truth for the communists is only in service of revolution, communism through whatever means necessary. So literally, the lie is at the heart of their ideology. Thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you very much, Grace Joe, Fadas Rakutis, Sophie Liu. Thank you.